Hello, friends, and welcome to the Seek His Kingdom blog. Today, I'd like to talk to you about man's desire to be meaningful. One of the most pathetic sins in the Bible is laziness. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 9 through 11, or 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8 can tell us more about this. It is a sin that is condemned both in the Old and New Testaments. A lazy man is the equivalent of a fruitless tree, an expensive product that touts durability but breaks the moment you begin using it. It is like a lion that is in captivity. It is created to hunt for food, but instead it gets it for free without even having to stand up. Laziness is truly pathetic and contemptible, and it is a problem today. But the opposite of laziness, hard work, is not always a perfect cure. In fact, simply pushing men to become hard workers does not, at the end of the day, solve the true problem. Meaningfulness. The first big problem with pushing men to be hard workers is that hard work does not solve a man's deep need to do something meaningful. A person goes to work because they need to make money, but a person is not satisfied by their job simply because it makes them money. If you ask a man about his job, he may never mention money even once, because for most men, it isn't only about the money. Money can get you things, but it doesn't make you feel like you're doing something important. Many kids growing up want to play professional sports, but it may come as a surprise to you that many professional athletes hate their jobs. Athletes like Andrew Luck, Derek Jeter, Georges St. Pierre, and Reggie Bush made comments in the past about their dislike for the sport that they were in, even though many of them made loads of money and even played for many years. The reason why all these athletes hated their sport was because they often felt like they were doing something that meant absolutely nothing to them. They were not prepared to make the sacrifices that others would make for a sport, because for them that work had no objective meaning. It was just a sport. Doing work that is not meaningful or isn't meant for him makes a man feel like he is in a dead end. And it is very difficult to make him get up in the morning and go do that job, unless he has a family to feed. Then he has no other choice but to get up and go. Even then, he struggles getting out of bed. This problem can sometimes be mitigated, though, if a man has found a meaningful hobby. I'm not talking about like fishing or playing poker. I mean actually doing something that he feels is a good thing. I believe this is the reason why so many movie stars and sports stars become philanthropists. They feel as though the money they earn from their job, which they may or may not like, they can use in a meaningful way by giving to charity, helping feed hungry children, and doing other what they deem important things. Other simpler people can become volunteers. We Christians, for example, find it meaningful to volunteer in our local churches, even if the jobs we have are not particularly meaningful. The double-edged sword of meaning. With all that said, meaningfulness in our work can cut both ways. Meaningfulness is something that we cannot get around. We don't want to do something that doesn't have any intrinsic meaning or doesn't affect anyone in any way. Paying people to dig up and cover up the same hole repeatedly for money will make them lose their mind, even if they get paid good money for it. But the need to do something meaningful does not always have the best results. The basic biblical understanding of human sinfulness shows us that people can take the good things that God has given to them and turn them into evil. Work is a good thing. Meaningful work is a very good thing. Sometimes. Meaningful work can be done, but it can be a very bad thing. What do I mean? To fully understand this, we have to define the meaning of, meaningful. Something that is meaningful is something that is significant. Merriam-Webster defines it as having a meaning or purpose. That's one of the definitions. Yes, in fact, that is where meaning is derived, in the purpose. Purpose decides whether or not something has meaning and what the meaning of something is. So, in fact, we can say that your supposed purpose gives or decides what is meaningful to you. Let us imagine an example to make this a little bit clearer. Larry is a man who's in his 30s. He lives in California. From the experiences of his life, Larry has come to believe that the purpose of his life is to pursue that which he supposes gives him the most satisfaction. Satisfaction is in fact always the final purpose of all human beings. But it is the thing that you believe will make you satisfied that decides your purpose. After taking a few trips abroad, Larry has decided that the thing that will give him most satisfaction and hence will make his life most meaningful is travel, his purpose. So now, Larry decides that for his life to truly be meaningful, he needs to figure out a way to make travel the thing he does regularly, because he finds that it makes his life more meaningful and gives him the highest levels of satisfaction. In fact, if Larry could find a full-time job where he could simply travel, he would take it in a heartbeat, even if that means he will make less money. Larry believes that doing this will make his life meaningful. The double-edged sword of all of this is that just because something is meaningful doesn't mean that it is always good. Remember how we said that meaningfulness is derived from purpose? Well, what if your purpose isn't really all that good? Like, how does Larry know that travel will always leave him satisfied? What if during one of the trips he gets robbed and comes home with empty pockets? Would he feel his life is meaningful after that? What if the thing that gives a man satisfaction is in fact evil at its core? Like, how do you know that the object from which you derive meaning isn't evil altogether? Many leaders of countries have made it their purpose to be leaders for the rest of their lives. It has become their goal, and it makes their life meaningful. If they were to lose that position, they would seemingly lose their entire identity. They legitimately believe that their life will only be considered meaningful if they are in power. And if they aren't, then their life is not even worth living. These men will go to very extreme means to continue to be in power simply because they understand it to be their calling in life, to be the man in charge, and that the remembrance of them in the future when they are gone will be directly tied to this position that they currently hold. Little do they know that the moment that they are gone, the people whom they ruled over will not weep for them, but will weep for joy that the wicked ruler is finally gone. The heart of the matter lies in this idea of satisfaction. Everyone desires satisfaction. But satisfaction alone is not a good gauge by which we can measure whether or not something is meaningful. If you do something for satisfaction's sake, then you will be stuck in a circular motion doing something that satisfies because it is meaningful and finding meaning in something because it satisfies. Satisfaction can only be found if you find something that has a greater purpose. True satisfaction comes from knowing that you are fulfilling the purpose for which you were created. Yes, created. Our modern world believes more and more that we simply evolved from a single-celled organism over millions of years and that we really don't have an objective overarching purpose. And so now we have to create our own subjective purpose, which at the end of the day fails to truly satisfy us because that purpose is not eternal. We have to be part of a greater story. It is a deep human need. King Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes most likely toward the end of his life, and he said this in Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 9. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Many people misunderstand this text to be saying that a young man rejoicing in his youth is a sin, and that young people shouldn't pursue satisfaction. But that isn't what King Solomon is saying. He is in fact commanding the young man to rejoice in his youth. But at the end, God will judge that rejoicing. If it brought true and lasting satisfaction, then you have pleased God. But if it only brought short-term satisfaction, then God was not pleased. And you will feel the consequences of your meaningless short-term satisfaction. King Solomon also said in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13, at the very end, the end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. What is sin? Sin is living for our own subjective purpose, disregarding the fact that there is an overarching purpose for every person that is alive, and it's called God's will. Turning away from the Word of God and living according to our own desires and our own self-made purposes is sin. And at the end of the day, it does not satisfy. That is why it does not please God. Living in the will of God in your daily life, in your work, in your hobbies, at home with your family, that is living a meaningful life. The man that does the will of the Lord does something lasting and meaningful, and it inevitably results in his greatness. But the man who does not goes straight to his own contemptible demise. Psalm chapter 1, verse 6. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Thank you.